ve helali benliğimize nakşetmek için yollardayız. Helal lokma, helal lokma, helal lokma, helal lokma. İşte yeniden uyanıyoruz senin yolunda, işte pişmanlığımızla yeniden huzurundayız.
Euzu billahi mineşşeytanirracim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbena inneke ta'lemu ma nukhfi ve ma nu'lin ve ma yakhfa 'alallahi min şey'in fil ardi ve la fis semâ. Elhamdülillahillezî vehebe li alel kibri İsmaîl ve İshâk. İnne Rabbi lesemi'ud du'a. Rabbi ec'alni muqimas salati ve min zurriyyeti. Rabbena ve teqabbel du'a. Rabbena ve teqabbel du'a. Rabbena ighfirli ve livalideyye ve lilmu'minine yevme yekumul hisab. Rabbena ighfirli ve livalideyye ve lilmu'minine yevme yekumul hisab. Sadakallahul azim. El Fatiha.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كلوا من طيبات ما رزقناكم واشكروا لله إن كنتم إياه تعبدون.
Kıymetli misafirlerimiz, Değerli katılımcılarımız, GİMDES ve Dünya Helal Vakfı'nın ortaklaşa düzenlediği 12. Uluslararası Helal ve Tayyib Ürünler Konferansı'na hoş geldiniz. Kıymetli misafirlerimiz, 11 yıldır yüz yüze muhabbetle gerçekleştirdiğimiz konferanslarımızı pandemi şartlarından dolayı bu yıl online gerçekleştirmek zorunda kaldık. Niyaz ediyoruz ki 13.'sü yine hep birlikte muhabbetle gerçekleşir. Hazırsanız programımızı başlatıyoruz.
Euzubillahimineşşeytanirracim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Esselamu Aleyküm ve Rahmetullahi ve Berekatuhu. Pek muhterem konuşmacılarımız ve izleyicilerimiz. Hepiniz 12. Helal ve Tayyib Ürünler Konferansı'na hoş geldiniz. Allah bu konferansımızı hayırlara vesile eylesin. Bilindiği gibi GİMDES olarak 12 yıldır çeşitli konferanslar ve fuarlar organize etmekteyiz. Bu etkinlikleri de belirli mekanlarda gerçekleştirmekteyiz. Fakat malumunuz olan koronavirüs musibeti sebebiyle bu sene fuarımızı gerçekleştiremedik. Ve konferansımızı da online olarak yapmak durumunda kaldık. Gönül isterdi ki yine hep beraber yüz yüze bakarak bu konferansı düzenleyelim. Fakat ilahi takdire oyun hükmek durumundayız. Madem başımıza böyle bir musibet geldi, kısaca koronavirüs meselesine değinmek isterim. Şu anda dünya olalı böyle bir salgın hastalığın girdabına girmemiştir. Bu bir afat, bu bir tabiri caizse musibet, ilahi bir musibet. Dünyanın bütün yerlerinde insanlar tedirgin. Ticaretleri bozuldu, sağlıkları bozuldu. Her türlü düzenleri allak bullak. Allah gönderdiği kitapta bunları zaten söylemiyor muydu? Demek ki suçlu sadece olayın musibeti bir koronavirüsü değil. Korona da yaratma gücünü elinde tutan Allah'ın bir mahluk. Ona emretti ve dünyaya geldi. Ve cezalandırmak istediği, ikaz etmek istediği insanları onun vasıtasıyla ikaz etmeye, korkutmaya ve ders almaya görevlendirmiş durumda. Olaya böyle bakmadığımız müddetçe envai türlü tedbirler alarak bu beladan yakamızı kurtarmamız mümkün değil. Bunun esasına inmemiz lazım. Musibet neden başımıza geldi? Son kitabında Cenab-ı Hak bütün bu olayları geçmişten örnekler vererek bizi bilgilendirdi. Ayette diyor ki, insanlar imtihandan geçirilmeden sadece iman ettik demeleriyle bırakılırlar vereceklerini mi sandılar? Andolsun ki biz onlardan öncekileri de imtihandan geçirmiş. Elbette Allah doğruları ortaya çıkaracak. Yalancılar da mutlaka ortaya koyacak. Yoksa kötülükleri yapanlar bizden kaçabileceklerini mi sandılar? Ne kadar kötü ve yanlış hüküm veriyorlar. Uyardı ve dikkatli olmamızı istedi. Buna rağmen biz dinlemediysek o kavimlere musallat edilen belalar, sıkıntılar, musibetlerin bizim de başımıza geleceğini 2 kere 2'nin 4 ettiği gibi bilmek zorundayız. Çünkü Allah'ın kanunu şaşmaz, değişmez. Allah kurduğu nizamın sahibidir. Dolayısıyla o sistemini, o yarattığı nizama zarar verecek bir takım davranışlar tehlikeli boyuta geldiği zaman hemen koruma prensiplerini ortaya koyar. Ceza alacaklara cezasını veriyor, helal olacakları helak ediyor. Ve tekrar nizamını düzgün halde devam ettirecek bir sistemi oluşturarak hayata devam ettiriyor. Bunun başka izahı var mı? Bunun için birkaç tane daha ayet okuyayım. Onlar yapılan bunca nasihati unuttukları zaman o kötülükten sakındıranları kurtardık. O zalimleri de fena hareketlerinden dolayı şiddetli bir azaba uğradı. Diğer bir ayette biz de kudretimizi ayrı ayrı alametleri olmak üzere başlarına tufan, çekirge, haşereler, kurbağalar ve kan gönderdik. Yine inat edip direndiler ve çok mücrim, suçlu bir kavim oldular. Ya tövbekar olacaksın, ya isyanında devam edeceksin. Seçim bize ait. Koronavirüsü bize bunları hatırlatmalı. Bunları söylemeli. Allah bizi muhafaza buyursun. Allah bizi bu günahlarımızdan dolayı mahkum etmesin. Böyle bir musibetin gölgesinde biz de bu konferansımızı gerçekleştirmek ve Allah'ın emirlerinden biri olan helal ve tayyip yiyecek yemenin önemine ne değineceğiz. Çünkü bu salgın bir kez daha ilahi emre uymanın helal ve tayyip yaşam sistemini hayatımıza tatbik etmenin gerekliliğini ortaya koymuştur. Biz mutlaka sizi biraz korku, biraz açlık yahut mala, cana veya mahsullere gelecek noksanlıkla imtihan ederiz. Sen sabredenleri müjdele. Sırrınca sabır ile emirlere riayet etmeye çalışacağız. Bu amaç uğruna muhtelif ülkelerden 13 kıymetli konuşmacımız konferans davetimize icabet ettiler. Kendilerine en samimi teşekkürlerimi iletmek isterim. Siz değerli izleyicilerimizle beraber 2 gün boyunca konuşmacılarımızın tebliğlerini dinleyip Allah'ın izniyle faydalanacağız inşallah. Defaten bütün konuşmacılarımıza ve katılımcılarımıza teşekkür eder. Allah'tan yolumuzu nurlandırmasını niyaz ederim. Allah'a emanet olun. Esselamu Aleyküm ve Rahmetullah ve Berekatuhu.
Evet, bu yıl 12.si düzenlenen Uluslararası Helal ve Tayyip Ürünler Konferansı'na iştirak eden katılımcıları selamların en güzeli olan Yüce Allah'ın selamıyla, en kalbi duygularımla selamlıyorum. Değerli arkadaşlarım, günümüz dünyasında çeşitlenen ihtiyaçlara binaen, ihtiyaçların karşılanması için de çok çeşitli yelpazede firmalar ve kurumlar ortaya çıkmıştır. Birçoğu uluslararası olan bu firmalar maalesef ürünleri arza sunduğu ülkelerde sadece gıda değil, aynı zamanda oraya bir kültürü ve bir akımı da getirmektedirler. Biz Müslümanların son yıllarda en çok maruz kaldığımız konu ne yazık ki kültürel emperyalizmdir. Yemek yeme alışkanlıklarımızdan yediğimiz gıdaların güvenliğine kadar kullandığımız teknolojik ürünlerden bindiğimiz arabalara kadar her alanda maalesef kültürel bir kuşatmanın içerisindeyiz. Özellikle az gelişmiş İslam coğrafyasındaki bazı ülkelerde bu kuşatma daha acımasız ve yoğun bir şekilde yaşanmaktadır. Yeni nesiller maalesef bu kuşatmışlığın içerisinde Batı medeniyetinin öngördüğü, dikte ettiği kendi kültürel kodlarını ve İslami olmayan bir hayata doğru itilmektedirler. Bu alanlardan birisi de ne yazık ki gıda ve içecek konusudur. Bu konuda kurulmuş olan sivil toplum örgütlerimizle devlet kurumlarımızın işbirliği bu açıdan önem taşımaktadır. Kendimizi, gençlerimizi ve neslimizi korumak, daha sağlıklı ve güvenli yetişmesini istiyorsak buna özen göstermeliyiz. Bu anlamda GİMDES çok önemli bir iş yapıyor. Ben GİMDES'i, kurucularını, bu sivil toplum örgütümüze katkı verenleri ve bu organizasyonları 12 yıldır sürekli bir şekilde sürdürenleri ve emek ortaya koyanları tebrik ediyorum. Ticaretin, ekonominin, sosyal yapının, fikri ve ruhi çalışmaların bozulduğu bir dönemde bizim için haram olan bazı hayvanların tüketilmesi sonucu ortaya çıktığını düşündüğümüz koronavirüs musibetinden umarım bütün dünya gerekli dersleri çıkarır. Çin'den yayıldığı söylenen bu hastalık, bu salgın temiz ve helal gıdanın önemini bir kez daha ortaya koymuştur. Şüphesiz insanı en iyi tanıyan ve onu yaratan ve halife olarak dünyaya da var eden Rabbimizdir. Onun bize Kur'an aracılığıyla gösterdiği yol da şüphesiz ki en doğru yoldur. Onun bize haram kıldığı her şey muhakkak ki sağlığımıza da zararlıdır. Onun hikmeti ve bilgisi sonsuzdur. Değerli arkadaşlarım, sözlerimi burada tamamlarken Müslümanların en tabii hakları olan helal ve Tayyib ürün talebine duyarsız kalmayarak bu organizasyonu tertip eden kardeşlerimi tekrar tebrik ediyor ve teşekkürlerimi sunuyorum. İnşallah bu tür organizasyonlar aracılığıyla insanlarımızın bilinçleri, yediğimiz, içtiğimiz maddelerin helal mi, haram mı olduğu konusundaki duyarlılıklar daha da artar. Bu duygularla hepinizi tekrar kalbi muhabbetlerimle selamlıyor. Sizleri Allah'a emanet ediyorum. Allah yar ve yardımcınız olsun.
Kıymetli misafirlerimiz, Birinci oturumun ilk konuşmacısı Cezayir'den doçent doktor
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Elhamdülillahi Rabbil alemin. Ve salatu ve selamu ala Resulillah. Distinguished scholars, honorable ulama, assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I am very honored to be among you today, despite the distance, to participate in the 12th International and Tayyib Products Conference. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for success. The idea of halal originated mainly in the Muslim migrants' host countries, where Muslims were worried of what they would find in the markets of meat that may be pork or not slaughtered according to Islamic law. But it soon developed to include all the manufactured foods. The integration of field experts and Sharia scholars has contributed to establishment of an integrated system for halal. The Fiqh Council seminars and Fatwa Councils exemplify that integration between field technical expertise and Islamic Sharia criteria. In addition to the religion and economic experts that this new system respects and which would attract Muslim consumers, the halal certificate also carries an ethical dimension in the field of tracking the manufacturing process. In a world where consumers are looking for more transparency, it assures the consumers about all stages of production and the components included in the product. Halal evolution. Halal trade has flourished throughout the world in Muslim and non-Muslim countries alike. The halal market imposed itself on the global economy despite all the attempts that sought to block it and limit its activity and spread. Over the past 2 decades, halal food has transformed from a niche market restricted to Muslim to a dynamic phenomenon with an important role in global trade. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation estimates the value of the halal sector at nearly $3 million and represents about 18% of global food manufacturing. The situation has aroused the appetite of many economic institutions and giants networks such as Nestlé, Coca-Cola, Quick, and McDonald's to find a place for them in that popular market, especially in Southeast Asia, where there is the highest population density of Muslims and where the halal market is flourishing and dominating the economy. This quest to join the ranks of halal is a radical change in the global economic communities towards the Islamic market and the Islamic world in general. This contributed to the transformation of the idea of halal from being a mere investigation of halal food by Muslim to a vast industry and a huge market that attracts capitals worldwide. Today, halal industry is present in the field of investment, banking, as well as in world of fashion, medical and cosmetic preparations, pharmacy and services, the latest of which has become known as halal tourism. At present, there are still new products entering this competitive emerging market. Gradually, the market of halal began to stabilize by organizing itself and laying its foundations. It has no longer become only a brand, but rather a quality specification subject to religious, ethical, and precise technical controls that overlap several disciplines. It's dependent on 3 things: the economic data of the agricultural market, the development of Islamic jurisprudence and the extent of its solutions to the emerging problems in the field, and the development of nutrition patterns, and people invest in improving their eating behavior. Muslim experts specialized in various fields of marketing, technology, and biochemistry emerged and worked in cooperation with Sharia scholars within the framework of jurisprudence and fatwa. They composed several works in the field trying to find evidence for halal food by extrapolating the Islamic jurisprudential heritage and projecting to the reality of modern food processing, including in fact, biotechnology and genetic modification. These experts worked hard and published scientific articles on halal methods of food processing and the rules that they should adhere to. They were also able to extract the ruling from the content of the jurisprudence old books while trying to strive with regard to the new situations. Relying mainly on Islamic sources of legislation, they were able to demonstrate the legitimacy of the food halal label. Migration and information circulations through the media and the internet, especially the social media, has contributed to sensitizing people. The field of halal extended to concern all issues of proper nutrition, food security, animal care, a human relationship with the environment, and healthy methods of manufacturing. Today, the internet forums are full of halal topics and the problems, solutions, and practical applications related to it. People of all genders, ages, and specialties take part in them. Through inquiries about the permissible and forbidden, major civilizational issues are discussed. This has actually contributed to bringing religious knowledge into the people's reality and transforming theoretical jurisprudence into practical field application. The halal circle expands. The high demand for halal products has pushed companies, restaurants, and hotels around the world to strive to meet the needs of Muslim customers. Today, large Western groups do not hesitate to go directly to Muslim customers. According to 2017 statistics, the countries that export the most Sharia-compliant foods are not Islamic countries, namely India, Brazil, Austria, the United States, Argentina, New Zealand, France, Thailand, the Philippines, and Singapore. This is because they found out a new opportunity to promote their products. The same applies to major food industrial groups or international brands that have accepted to be subject to the supervision of the Halal Committee. The share of these countries in the market for halal products is approximately 85% compared to 15% share of Muslim countries. Reactions to halal expansion. This expansion was not welcomed at the beginning. In fact, secularism in many Western countries does not mean freedom of belief, but the displacement of religion from all aspects of life, with clear prejudice and open hostility to Islam, its teaching, and everything that represents its symbols and rituals. In order to fulfill that, those countries prevented the legal slaughter, and the sweeping law came to impose compulsory stunning in all slaughterhouses on the pretext of protecting animal rights and sparing them pain when slaughtered. This decision has had an impact on Muslims, especially on the bodies of halal sealing, fatwa, committees, and jurisprudence councils. A clear discrepancy appeared in the fatwa between those permitting stunning with some conditions and those prohibiting it definitely, as it causes the death of some animals before they reach the slaughterer's knife. Studies have followed in this file. Among the most prominent ones is the study conducted by the At Your Service, à votre service, AVS, which shows that adhering to the conditions set by the jurist for the permissibility of stunning is difficult, if not impossible in practice, due to many factors. Failure to ensure compliance to it and the possibility of transgression by the slaughterers and butchery owners. It cannot be applied technically, as it does not fulfill the purpose of stunning, because the animal must remain unconscious till the end of the slaughtering process, whether manually or mechanically. The study showed that the stunning issue is surrounded by many unknowns. The biological vulnerability of some animals, especially poultry, makes electrocution not precisely measurable. The consequences of electrocution depend on the circumstances in which they are stunned, the condition of the animal and the method of raising and transporting it. In order for stunning to fulfill its purpose, it must remain for the time necessary to complete the slaughtering process and ensure the complete death of the animal. If we estimate, for instance, the time interval between the electrocution and cutting the neck of chickens, for example, at 20 seconds, and the time required for the animal to die completely at 25 seconds in optimal conditions, so it becomes necessary to chicken remains stunned for a period not less than the sum of the two periods at least, that is 45 seconds, in order to ensure that the animal does not wake up during or before the slaughter. The problem is that the animal's death may be slower if the jugular veins are not cut properly, which is what happens frequently in automatic slaughter. This is why the controlling laws are directed to precaution by extending and deepening the duration of the stun. This requires increasing the intensity of the current and the duration of exposure to electrocution. Meanwhile, if we want to make sure that the poultry does not die by stun, we must lower the intensity and reduce the duration. Studies show that the percentage of chicken that die by electronarcosis at a frequency of 50 Hz for 4 seconds and an intensity of 60 milliamperes is not less than 20%. If the current intensity drops below 60 milliamperes at a frequency of 50 Hz, of course the rate of death decreases until it becomes almost non-existent. In contrast, the rate of death by electrocution gradually increases according to the height of the intensity until the current intensity reaches 150 milliamperes at a frequency of 50 Hz. Almost all the chicken die electrocuted. When the frequency equals 800 Hz, there are no deaths regardless to the current strength. The problem is the efficacy of the stunning. If the current decreases to less than 60 milliampere or the frequency increased to more than 550 Hz, it would not be enough to cause the required stunning. In order for the animal to lose consciousness for a sufficient period, the current must be increased and the frequency reduced, and this inevitably leads to death of a percentage of the animal by electrocution. It's known that the increase in utilitarian thought and its deepening effect on all levels and the general trend of behavior toward greedy consumerism made consumption an objective motivated by pleasure and maximizing benefit. Slaughter has become an industry concerned by making profit, far from being bound to any religion. Machines were introduced in slaughterhouses to speed up the production process. Those governments no longer pay any attention to Sharia control on slaughter. On the contrary, they promoted propaganda broadcast by the enemies of religious in the name of animal welfare societies. So they started considering the Sharia methods of slaughter as brutal methods that should be banned. Consequently, they fought them fiercely and did not allow them in many of their slaughterhouses. Controversies began between government and associations that stood firm on their stance, refusing electronarcosis. AVS Association has shown in its publication that the purpose of imposing stunning is to increase profits at the expense of people's health, environmental balance, and social stability, regardless of concern for animal comfort. Excessive eating of meat is a health scourge that has afflicted this area on the one hand. On the other hand, fattening animals and accelerating production with the use of hormone, antibiotics, and unnatural means leads to environmental disasters. Health issues increase among consumers, and this leads to losses in medical expenses and consequences of inability to work. Supporters of the stunning raised the slogan of mercy to animal and not exposing them to pain of slaughter. This is denied by these associations, which reject the stunning. They believe that the inference of cessation of pain is very speculative and that the animal's loss of consciousness is not an indication of loss of sensation. Science has repeatedly proved that the sensation continues despite the animal's inability to move. Many specialists acknowledge that the concept of pain has changed a lot during the past 40 years. Several works carried out by researchers on the pain felt by animals during slaughter indicate that it's difficult to determine its extent, as it's not possible to break into the animal's brain to find out, and the loss of reflex acts is no longer a sufficient indication of loss of sensation. Many scientists affirm that when the jugular veins are cut, blood supply to the brain stops. With the loss of blood, the sense centers are disrupted and they die within a few seconds, thus no pain is felt by the animal. As for the animal's convulsions, it's only a reflexive, involuntary act without any sensation. However, the electric shock leads to a gradually increasing muscle contraction accompanied by excruciating pain until reaching the stage of tetanus. This may lead to a cessation of breathing and the heart rate is disturbed and loses its regularity, then it stops. In addition, there are various injuries in the brain and internal organs depending on the strength of the current. The European Food Safety Authority, EFSA, has acknowledged that the pain caused by electrocution is highly severe. Among the anti-halal reactions is the attempt to link it with Islamic fundamentalism and religious extremism and considering it as a violation of freedom of individuals and the establishment of racial discrimination. One of the last declarations in the field of anti-halal seeking to distort it in the public opinion is the thesis presented by a researcher in the French National Center for Scientific Research, CNRS, titled Le marché halal ou l'invention d'une tradition, the halal market or the invention of a tradition. The author believes that by embracing halal food, multinationals are giving fundamentalists a strong hand in European societies and helping them build a separation wall between Muslims and non-Muslims. The book was very popular, widely welcomed by anti-halal circles, and received widespread publicity in the media. Those governments were hopeful as they insisted to impose a secular ideology on their people so that people would abandon the religion. Consequently, the halal market would shrink and lose its customers. However, the opposite is exactly what happened. The halal economy flourished in the heart of those countries, became popular and expanded astronomically. Over time, the figure of halal began to become clear and its truth revealed to people. So it has no longer become just a sale of meat that was slaughtered according to Islamic law, but rather a philosophy of life based on returning to nature, respecting the environment, achieving a balance in nutrition, adhering to hygiene and food safety from toxic and harmful substances, and preventing fraud and extravagance. Halal means avoiding impurities, intoxicants, and drugs. It's also avoiding genetic modification if it harms the health of the environment, and adhering to good food in all its dimensions. False associations. The development of halal and its expansion was not without slippages, mainly represented by the emergence of halal seal associations, which now number in the thousands, seeking in a clear competition to invest in that promising market. However, many of them were not reliable. Numerous studies have shown the falsehood of certificates and the seeking of some association to make profit to the detriment of religion and values. Many inspections and monitoring companies and their consumer pressure uncovered these enterprises. The multiple scandals raised many questions about the halal word. It turned out that some of the meat trade by supplier and consumer did not comply with the standards specified in Islamic law. This led government to try to control the situation, assigning special bodies to designate the slaughterers and undertaking to monitor all meat marketed for Islamic consumption by placing a certificate stating that it's halal. In France, for example, the task was assigned to 3 bodies, the Paris Mosque, Lyon Mosque, and Ivry Mosque, all of which were approved by the French Ministry of Agriculture. They claimed that the authorities had put in place strict controls, but that was not enough to build people's trust. The halal meat trade in France remained neglected and almost unknown for a long time before the government moved in recent decades after the rise of fake halal meat scandals. It investigated the abuses committed by these associations, despite the existence of the 1980 decree that subjected the legal slaughter process and those in charge to state control. The French Directorate Général for Competition, Consumer Affairs and Fraud Control, la Direction Générale de la Concurrence et de la Consommation, de la Répression de Fraude, inspected 11 producers of halal products in June 2004, and the result was that 6 of them were tried for proof of fraud and 2 others received official warning. The situation is not new. The publication of the Integrity for the Defense of Muslim Consumers, founded in 1979, began to warn against such fraud. And from what was stated in it, beware Muslims, cheating is whispered in butcheries in France by writing on the cover halal meat, by the false associations that take advantage of the situation. Although these false certificates still exist, being warned about them has opened the eyes of many people. Even Islamic governments that depend on import became tougher in dealing with them. Today, voices are being raised in different parts of the Islamic world by strengthening standards for monitoring halal slaughtering operations in major exporting countries, which are often non-Muslim countries. Submission and seizing opportunity. The halal market represents 5.5 billion euro in a year in France, a figure that exceeds the food sales ceiling of biological food and kosher food, which has become an attractive market for those interested in the food industry, in restaurants, and in fast food distribution companies. All these generous indications have prompted the biggest stores, such as Carrefour and Casino, to invest in the Muslim consumer. The biggest challenge today is to upgrade the halal sectors to the deregulation required by the level of safety and quality, and to create a unified system that includes international recognized and accredited standards. Creating such a system that requires international agreements between the Islamic countries and others will contribute to accelerating the creation of a single global market for halal products. As it's known, the classification criteria of halal products in the United States and European countries are still different from the standards applied in Asia, for instance, or in the Middle East and North Africa. This disparity, which is not based on scientific foundation of research and scrutiny in accordance with that of Islamic Sharia rules, is considered one of the main challenges that hinder the endeavors for creating a single global market for halal products. This difference in the standards adopted for classifying halal products exists even among the countries of the Islamic world themselves. Conclusion and recommendations. The halal activities related to the application of Islamic standards in the most accurate stages of production. For instance, livestock must be fed healthy and clean halal fodder, and everything harmful to health or mind must be avoided. In this particular year, and with the spread of the COVID-19 virus, the world has become aware of the people's fragility, the weakness of their resistance, and the deterioration of their immunity. This is itself a great incentive to open eyes and direct people towards serious thinking in choosing safe, healthy, and balanced food. Calls were raised for a return to biological food and avoiding the toxins and chemical additives, excessive use of antibiotics and hormones, genetic modification, and their potential risks to the environment and health. It's therefore an opportunity for Muslims to save this lost, confused world by first returning honestly to religion and bringing it to the reality of people. 2, being diligent in finding halal alternatives, because the circle of halal is much wider than the circle of illicit, and good food is more abundant than bad one. If it weren't human greed, all this corruption wouldn't have appeared, and this is accordance with the Almighty subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس ليذيقهم بعض الذي عملوا لعلهم يرجعون في سورة الروم الآية 41. So corruption has appeared on land and sea because of what people's hands have earned, in order to make them taste some of what they have done, so that they may return. 3, the scholars' keenness to identify what is halal from the illicit, and strive to devise rulings for the jurisprudential development in the field, far from justification and submission to the reality imposed today by government and people who have no interest other than filling their stomachs and their safes. 4, a strong specialist academic research that shows the reality of the benefit that halal leads all humanity to, in terms of an environment balance and a guarantee of human health and animal welfare. 5, strong media that educate people and eliminate the suspicion that are raised about halal. 6, ultimately people must understand that the issue of halal is a matter of religion and belief, and a matter of moral and behavioral commitment. The prevalence of cases of cheating and the spread of malignant disease are but the result of distancing from this path that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has desired for His servants. Today, studies confirm that the cause of global poverty is not the lack of nutrition, but rather imbalance and waste, and that if people return to the teaching of Islam, there will not be poor in this world. 7, working to establish a single global market for halal products throughout 3 parallel and interconnected tracks. The first of which is unifying standards and specification for halal products. This path requires work to create a global body that oversees the development of such standard. The second is to work on innovation and continuous creativity in developing new products. And the third is to create an integrated supply chain that began with generating investment and establishing a production base. 8, establishing strong institutions at the government level to provide complete guidance, work on auditing and documentation, and to ensure increased transparency and clarity to gain consumer confidence and promote the growth of the halal sector. وما ذلك على الله بعزيز. That would not be difficult for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Today we are looking forward to a pioneering renaissance led by Islamic countries such as Turkey and Malaysia. Turkey is seeking to achieve leadership in the field of halal products around the world through concrete steps on the ground. Wallahu al-mu'in subhanahu wa ta'ala. So finally I thank you very much for your attention and following up this presentation, and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for success and guidance for all of us. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Kıymetli misafirlerimiz, birinci oturumun ikinci konuşmacısı Kuveyt'ten Doktor Halal Bazedi'ye bağlanıyoruz.
Okay, don't talk. Let me talk, okay? Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This presentation is entitled Introduction to the Position of States and NGOs in Halal Certification. My name is Dr. Hani Mansour al-Mazidi. I am an international activist in the field of halal and food safety research since 1981. I am a retired person now. I've been working in this field for 40 years. The scope of this presentation will be an introduction to the position of states and NGOs in halal certification. Outline of this presentation will be, I'll give you an introduction. And then what is NGOs? The main goals of NGOs that seek to serve halal, conclusions, and recommendation. Introduction. In the last century, and specifically at the beginning of the 80s, the sectors of food and non-food products have developed significantly. Technical components and innovation were introduced into them that led to the development of systems and standards by non-governmental organizations, or they called NGOs, in non-Islamic countries serving these two sectors. Initially, these organizations played a non-profit role in their inceptions. However, over time, they have transformed into commercial enterprises, but remaining the umbrella of being non-governmental, non-profit organization. A good example of Islamic non-governmental, non-profit organization are the halal certification bodies. These bodies are credited in providing halal services that have saved most of the Islamic nation from falling into the religious embarrassment of violating the requirement of Islamic law in food, drink, and other necessary products that in this era individuals are totally dependent on them. Standards developed by halal NGOs have created new business opportunities, particularly in niche market, and certifications act as marketing tools. Almost all the standards that have been studied and developed by halal certification bodies can be described as secular, serving mainly the industrial sector more than Muslim consumers. This has been wonderful for governmental organizations that do not want to clash with Western countries for standards inspired by a religious identity and always seek to serve business individuals who are chasing profit regardless of its origin, i.e. whether it is from permissible or prohibited source. In multicultural societies, halal systems which are inspired by Islamic law help to create norms and boundaries that initially help immigrants who form a religious minority in non-Muslim countries to reconnect with their indigenous culture. So what are NGOs? A non-governmental organization or an NGOs are a non-profit organization that were originally established to serve citizens in their own countries. NGOs operate under the law of non-governmental organization and work independently of the government in their country. NGOs, which are sometimes called public benefits associations, are originally organized on the basis of serving social purposes and are cooperatives in nature, not commercial. NGOs play a major role in international development, aid, and charitable work. It is by definition a non-profit, but it may manage budget of millions or up to billions of dollars each year. As such, NGOs rely on a variety of funding sources, from private donations and membership fees to government contribution. There are several distinct types of NGOs, each with their own mandate. Examples of NGO include those that support human rights, advocate better health, or encourage political participation. The type of NGOs are as follows. Bingo, which is an international business-friendly non-governmental organization, example, the Red Cross. INGO, which is environmental non-governmental organization, which Greenpeace and Wildlife Fund. Congo, which is an NGO organized by the government, an example, International Union for Conservation of Nature. And INGO, which is international government non-governmental organization, example is Oxfam. And Kwango, which is a semi-independent non-governmental organization, such as the International Organization for Standardization, which is ISO. The World Bank classified the NGO activity as operational and advocacy. NGOs act as implementers, catalysts, and partners. They mobilize resources to provide goods and services to people affected by a natural disaster. They drive change and partner with other organizations to address problems and meet human needs. The main goals of NGOs that seek to serve halal are: develop plans to increase awareness and commitment to halal issues, approval of halal certification bodies for the production and export of food and medicine based on their compliance with the provisions of Islamic Sharia, encouraging conferences and seminars that contribute to achieving its goals, promote training programs specialized in halal issues and skills, coordination and cooperation with local and international agencies, companies, and institutions to achieve the best halal practices in the production, manufacture, and marketing of halal products, promoting scientific research and publishing in the field of halal, following up on the work of food and drug producers and exporting to Islamic countries and Islamic societies, and helping them to continue adhering to the provisions of Islamic law, contributing to the production, manufacture, and distribution of halal products. So are halal NGOs really serving the true halal message, where the governmental agencies a stumbling block in front of halal NGOs that carry the message of true halal? In general, most halal standards at the crucial halal clauses allow non-halal practices and the use of non-halal ingredients that penetrate Islamic market under legal framework. What I'm saying that the present international halal standard actually permit the use of non-halal ingredients and non-halal practices that penetrate into the Islamic market through a legal law. The excuses that one might find in fatwas and halal standard are under the following terms: suitable, not recommended, but okay if it is necessary. If the amount is too little, it is okay if it is artificial. So you see these words as excuses in international halal standard, and from these you can see that non-permittable ingredient and non-permittable practices penetrate into our halal, into our Islamic market. Conclusion: halal NGOs that serve halal causes are the solution to serve Muslim consumers in various parts of the world. So we agree that halal NGOs present is very important to serve the Muslim computer problem, to provide them with halal product, halal service. However, current halal NGOs have the responsibility in finding solution for a future Muslim generation to provide true halal product and services. What I'm saying is that the present halal NGOs, although they're encountering many problems to provide the halal product, halal services, they have to solve the problem that they encounter for the future generation who are going to have hold halal certificate body to provide halal, true halal product and services. Recommendation: there is a need to establish a halal NGO that serve true halal. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much indeed, and sorry if I'm too fast reading the presentation. If you have any question, you can always contact me through my email or my telephone number. This is my photos in 1981 with Brother Amjad Mahbub in AFIC, Australian Federation of Islamic Council. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Dear speakers and dear esteemed watchers, we will continue our conference after 30 or 40 minutes later, because our esteemed speaker, Dr. Hani El-Mezidi, has finished his presentation a bit earlier. We kindly ask your patience and understanding about the situation. Inshallah, we will continue after 30 or 40 minutes later. Thank you very much.